You are listening to Swamp Things, a podcast about University of Florida sports with the Orlando Sentinel's Edgar Thompson and the AP's Mark Long. Edgar and Mark discuss the goings-on with the Gators in Gainesville, where each is a longtime resident who has seen championship success, coaching turmoil, and plenty of drama on and off the field.
Greetings and welcome to Swamp Things, a podcast about the Florida Gators. It's December 2nd, 2025. I'm Edgar Thompson of the Orlando Sentinel, joined by Mark Long of the Associated Press. Always good to see him. I see Mark every single day and talk to him even more. Here from Gainesville, Florida. Well, Mark, it's finally over, mercifully. 6-week job search, coaching search comes to an end. The Gators get Tulane's Jon Sumrall, and he was introduced on Monday over at the Heavener Football Center. Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, living legends in the audience. Danny Wuerffel, the Heisman winner, 1996. Everyone knows him, who was involved in the search for Jon Sumrall, was there. Probably about 100 people. His family's there, his parents, his wife's parents, their 4 children. It was a nice crowd. It was more of a crowd, I think, than Billy Napier's introduction, and nice event. I think Jon Sumrall for sure won the press conference. A lot of skeptics probably tuned in and were won over, I have to feel, by the end of that thing, Mark. He was dynamic, personable, witty, leaned into all the things Florida fans want to hear, right? At one point he said, I want the scoreboard to light up. I'll recruit with my hair on fire. This is red meat for the fan base that really wanted Lane Kiffin to be the head coach. Quick thought on just Coach Sumrall's introduction?
Yeah, I thought he said all the right things, did all the right things. He handled himself with poise and real confidence. You know, it's exactly what you would want from a head coach. Clearly, this guy's ready. I liked him. I liked everything about him. You know, his hires are going to be key, right? You know, because this is not going to be Billy Napier 2.0. That's what people need to understand. They are not going to allow him to bring his entire staff from Tulane. He's going to hire an outside offensive coordinator, outside defense coordinator. They're giving him a general manager to pair with him. This is not going to be Billy Napier. He's not hiring his friends, right? That was one of the quotes that stood out. I am not going to hire my friends. I don't hire my friends. So Billy hired a lot of his friends. He had a staff full of buddies, a staff of guys he was very loyal to, guys who were loyal to him, and it didn't work. And it didn't work from day one because of that. They were in over their head. So this is going to be different. Now, I don't know that it's going to work. Nobody can say it's going to work. I don't know that it's, if it's going to end up better than Lane Kiffin. I do think, given how the Lane Kiffin has unfolded, I think Jon Sumrall is going to be a better fit at Florida. Whether or not that means winning, I can't promise you that. The reality is, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, is 2 Hall of Fame coaches who have really won at Florida, Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. So let's not pretend like it's grab coach instant winning at Florida. It doesn't work like that. It really takes a special guy, it seems like, to win big at the University of Florida.
Win big anywhere. I mean, LSU maybe. Les Miles was – I thought he wasn't – I mean, Les Miles had some moments. I mean, he was clever on 4th downs and trick plays. Ed Orgeron was so bad at Ole Miss. I mean, he won like 5 games. I mean, it was more than that. But and then he gets to LSU, but he got the right offensive coordinator and quarterback. And in this day and age, that's what you have to have, right? He got Joe Brady, he got Joe Burrow, and the rest is history, literally. I mean, historic offense and success. So we'll see. We will talk about the hirings in a minute, but let's put a bow on Lane Kiffin, though. Okay, Lane Kiffin went to LSU on Sunday. It was a tumultuous exit, to say the least, from Oxford. The fans sent him off with the middle finger and a lot of other things. And it was not a good situation or good scene. And it's just, we talked about the calendar before. Look, Lane Kiffin's not a victim. He's getting $13 million. This is his decision. He's a 50-year-old man making a decision he feels is best for him and his family by all accounts. But here's a guy with an 11-1 team heading into the college football playoff. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to go to another school that's being rebuilt that could get to the playoff next year and win some games in the playoff, which he already kind of has at Ole Miss. Not saying that means he should have stayed at Ole Miss, but this is the decision this man was forced to make. And Jon Sumrall, in his case, is playing in the AAC championship Friday in New Orleans against North Texas. The winner of that game will earn the Group of 5 bid by all accounts. And he will be allowed to coach in the playoff, though you got to think it's probably going to be a one-game run. That team's going to Texas Tech and Lubbock, and Texas is very good, you got to feel. So tough road there. But, yeah, the whole Lane Kiffin ending was just, I'm sure not how he envisioned it, and no one could see that coming. But it's where we're at with the college football calendar being what it is with the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, and I think you got to at least respect that Lane Kiffin he did not want to abandon his team. He wanted to coach LSU or Ole Miss through the playoff. And I think you got to at least pat him on the back and say, hey, nice try. Ole Miss wasn't going to LSU wasn't going to Ole Miss wasn't going to have it because you can't have the fox in the hen house, right? There was no scenario where you could leave Lane Kiffin in place at Ole Miss around 90 players who have free reign to transfer for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6, whatever it is, maybe a month or more. You can't leave him around those guys while he's recruiting to LSU. And I know he had offered to put some parameters in place. I don't know what those parameters were. I don't think those have been revealed. But I would say this, the only way I would have let him coach is if he signed a 2-year, kind of a 2-year non-compete clause, non-compete contract where he can't touch a single player on Ole Miss's roster for 2 years and at LSU, and none of his coaches can have any contact for 2 years. Now, could that have been challenged in court? Probably. I think with the freedom that these players have, one of those players could have sued and probably gotten out of Ole Miss and gotten to go to LSU. But that's the only scenario I can see where maybe this would have worked, is if he had some sort of non-compete clause where he got to stay with Ole Miss, but nobody on that team could come with him to LSU for a certain period of time. And I would say 2 years would be fair. But this guy's planning to take Ole Miss's quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, with him to LSU. So, I don't know that he would have signed that. I don't know if it would have stood up, all those things. But it was expected, right? I don't think anybody came out of left field. People have been talking for weeks that Ole Miss wasn't going to let him coach in the playoff. That they were looking to already move on, hire somebody else, promote from within, and they were going to let this guy walk if he wanted to walk. I don't know if it's arrogance, cockiness, whatever. Maybe you're just trying to protect your program. I think it's a little bit of a combination of all that. But not an ideal ending. And if they don't fix the calendar and move coaching and player acquisitions till after the season's done, you're going to have this again. This is not the first time. It won't be the last. We're going to see it with the Group of 5 every year, where these Group of 5 coaches who win are jumping to other jobs. Now, they're going to get to stay because they're not recruiting the same players. Like Billy brought 2 guys with him from Louisiana Lafayette to Florida, Osiris Torrance. Cam Waits, Osiris Torrance, and Montrell Johnson. So 3 guys. And Sumrall might bring the same 2 or 3 guys. It's going to be a hand-picked couple of few. But in an Ole Miss LSU transition, you're talking about potentially dozens of players who are going to jump from Ole Miss to LSU to follow Lane Kiffin and that staff. Several of them already with him in Baton Rouge.
Hell hath no fury like an SEC program scorned, right?
Yeah.
That was ugly. But here's Jon Sumrall's take on the calendar. I'm just going to read a quote. It's pretty good. And this just gives you a sense of Coach Sumrall's, wit and speaking ability and ability to put pieces together quickly. I shared this with my team yesterday when I gave them the news I was coming here. The NFL, their rules kind of make sense. They do this thing called football season. And then after football season, a coach can leave and take a job. They have free agency in the draft. That's player movement. They have OTAs and mini camp and training camp. And then you know what they do then? They play football season. Then there's coach movement again and player movement again. They have contracts that are kind of binding. We have contracts that are, I don't know what they are. It's just a piece of paper you probably put in a bonfire. So he was pretty good on that. That was clever. But yeah, Lane Kiffin was the target. Let's just be clear. We're not being naive here. He was the target. But coincidentally, Jon Sumrall was the first interview UF conducted just because of a quirk in the scheduling. Scott Stricklin did a Zoom call with him, and before he talked to any other coach. But they set their sights on Lane Kiffin. We all knew this. They spoke to Lane the week after the Georgia game, November 1. So that Thursday, I believe, they spoke to him. Great conversation. I think Scott felt, the people who interviewed him felt. And there was even terms discussed and a lot of, they were making headway there. And then things kind of not much conversation, if any, I don't think any, during the week of the game, which is understandable. Florida went to Ole Miss November 15th. And that was kind of priority there for Lane, especially given the Gators had stunned them in the swamp last year. You don't want to lose to them again. And that game was nip and tuck for a good while, right? So then nothing. And UF basically is like, hey, we would really like to have some clarity by the end of your bye week. They had a bye week, the Rebels, before preparing for the Egg Bowl November 28th, and didn't get any. So it's kind of like you get a bad feeling. You got to do other interviews. Jon Sumrall suddenly is moving top of list, it seems, though many others were interviewed, including Clark Lee from Vanderbilt. He was one. Jed Fish from Washington. And a real wild card, Mark, right? Matt Patricia was apparently interviewed and maybe in the chamber in case Sumrall did not work out, because let's be clear, Jon Sumrall was coveted by many programs. This again is different from Billy. This isn't Billy 2.0. Scott Stricklin set his sights on Billy Napier. No one else was pursuing Billy Napier in that cycle. He might have been pursued in other cycles previously. I still have my doubts. Was he, among others, interviewed for jobs? Did he get offers? Did he have MOUs? I don't believe that he did. Everyone wants that. Billy wanted to act like he had all these jobs he turned down and just decided to come to Florida. I don't know that was it. Jon Sumrall did. Auburn wanted Jon Sumrall. Okay. Ole Miss would have possibly hired him. LSU might have shifted to him if Lane stayed at Ole Miss. So they did set their sights on Jon Sumrall. And, by Wednesday, Mark, right? Didn't they have him pretty much locked and loaded?
Yeah, they signed an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, locking in terms of the contract on Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. So, all these rumors and speculation about Condren and Scott getting ghosted.
That's Gary Condren, the top booster.
Condren, top booster, and Scott Stricklin getting ghosted by Lane Kiffin on Thanksgiving is all wrong. I mean, they had well moved on from Lane long before Thanksgiving, and they had a deal in place with Jon Sumrall even before Thanksgiving Day, which is why when after these games, you saw the pieces were everybody knew, right? Because Auburn moved quickly. I think Auburn was the first one to really announce its hiring. When it got Alex Golish from USF, Arkansas moved from Golish to Silverfield, Florida signed some. So all these all of these pieces, moving parts were really in place before Thanksgiving. And I think that tells you it's a good idea for future knowledge that this is the way the calendar is going to work. People are going to get things in place before Thanksgiving so that your guy can be signed after that final weekend of games, those Friday, Saturday games, so that by signing day, which is the following week, he's in place. So you have some clarity for your program moving forward.
Yeah, there will not be another Lane Kiffin, though, in the coaching carousel, more than likely, because he's just different. What did Scott called him yesterday? A fascinating guy. He said he has very good conversations with him and liked him and all that, but he did call him a fascinating guy. And read what you want into that. And here's Lane Kiffin on Instagram or whatever on Saturday talking, saying he's praying to his deceased father, Monty Kiffin, the former defensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Bucks and various other teams, for guidance. And someone said to me, it's like, okay, that's fine. And that's great that you're seeking, this kind of counsel from the most important person in your life in some ways or many ways. But do you have to put that on Instagram? I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's
right.
Like and the word the person used was he's a diva. And so Florida isn't getting a diva in Jon Sumrall by any stretch. This guy's as real as it comes. Loved many things that he did at the press conference. The most endearing thing for me, and I'm not a parent, I'm an uncle to 6, godson to 1, and have many children in my lives from extended family. Kids are awesome. And man, him going down the lineup with his kids, talked about his wife he's known since high school. They went to prom. He went with a different girl, and she went with like his best friend. And then, eventually they came together, and they have 4 kids who were there, twins, fraternal twins. And I think a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old who he called the caboose, like bringing up the rear. And he just kind of described each child, and his 12-year-old girl, he says, knows more football than most of the men in this room. And it was great. I thought that was awesome. So it was cool.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I really stood out that it was clear. The messaging was clear. Danny Wuerffel sent a tweet a couple of days ago saying, Florida's going to get a great offense coordinator. This guy's going to be great, and he's going to get a fantastic offense coordinator. So you could see that the messaging was, hey, you're going to be a tough sell. Not only are you a group of 5, but you're a defensive coach, right? Yeah, that is not the necessarily the fit at Florida. So he made it a point to say, hey, listen, we're going to do things differently than I've done it at Tulane. We're going to light up the scoreboard. We're going to get a great offensive coordinator in here. We're going to do a lot of those things. And of all the things to me that stood out was he said, I want to be Bob Stoops. I want to be a defensive guy who was at Oklahoma, was at Florida, then Oklahoma for a long time, a defensive guy who lit up the scoreboard. So, for all of the comparisons to Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier, Billy Napier, all those, this guy had a different one, Bob Stoops, defensive-minded guy who knew how to hire an offensive coordinator who could get it done on that side of the ball.
I think Tom Landry invented the 4-3 defense, I believe. I think Don Shula was a defensive coordinator. There's 2 right there for you, right?
Well, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's one of the.
Bill Parcells.
Yeah, Bill Parcells. There have been plenty of defensive coaches who have thrived in college football, NFL, at every step of the way. You can win with defense. But I will say this, it's harder. And I had a current coach explain this to me, and he said, if I was Florida, I would hire an offensive coach. And here's why. And you know what? It doesn't even matter. I'll tell you, it's Will Muschamp. I talked to Will Muschamp, and Will Muschamp said, and he's been at Florida, and he was a defensive guy at Florida, and it didn't work out for him at Florida, partly because of offensive struggles, right? And he's like, Florida should hire an offensive guy, and here's why. In the state of Florida, you can find defensive players. You can find skill positions left and right. They're all over the place. And it's not hard to find a defensive guy to coach the defense. If you're a defensive guy, you hire an offensive coordinator. The second you have success, your offensive coordinator is gone. Everybody's going to be looking more. That's the trend in college football, is to hire offense. That's the trend in the NFL. Hire offense. And his point was, if you hire an offensive coach, you're going to have continuity on that side of the ball, no matter what happens on defense. You can lose your defensive coordinator. You're going to have continuity on the more important side of the ball because the game is like kind of set up, right? Everything leans to offense. Their penalties, the rules, all of that leans to offense. So his point was, you're just behind the 8 ball because if you win, you lose your OC, and now you got a new OC. They're going to change the scheme. They might change the terminology. You just not have as much continuity. It's tougher to have continuity on that side of the ball year to year with different guys. And he experienced that at Florida, right? With Charlie Weiss leaving for Kansas. He hires Brent Pease. That doesn't work out. He has to get Kurt Roper as kind of a lame duck coach. That didn't work out. So, that's his experience. And I get that might not be the experience here, but I also understand his point. And I think Florida does, which is why everybody and their brother went out of their way to say, this is not going to be a defensive setup. This is going to be, we're going to go get the best offense coordinator money can buy, probably one of these guys that are, $1.5 to $2 million deals, and go from there.
Yeah, I think you'll get an offensive coordinator who's more hungry than Charlie Weiss, who obviously looking at him was hungry a lot, but he but
one of my great Charlie Weiss's story. Charlie Weiss used to sit on a cooler at the he had this cooler, and it was always like this running joke of, was he got a ham sandwich in the cooler that he's sitting on the sideline? But Charlie had a great self-deprecating, humor.
He's clever.
And he is very clever. And we're talking to him. Somebody asked the question around Thanksgiving, hey Charlie, what's coach? What's a must on your Thanksgiving plate? And he's like, he looks at the report and he goes, oh, I get it. Here's the fat guy. You want to ask the fat guy what he eats on Thanksgiving or what he can't not eat on Thanksgiving? He just had a real sense. I love Charlie Weiss, and he had a real sense of who he was and was unbelievably confident in his skin and as a play caller. Anyway, fantastic. But I love that. It made me, anytime you bring him up and around Thanksgiving, I think of that line that he had.
It's great. So I wasn't here for Charlie Weiss. I'm sure I would have enjoyed him. But then Brent Pease, let's be honest, he wasn't the offensive coordinator for the great Boise State teams. He wasn't. He was a receivers coach. Okay.
Right.
And then Kurt Roper's coming from Duke. And Duke was good that year and had that explosive Alamo Bowl or whatever game it was against Johnny Manziel, who was totally injured. So I don't, I think they're going to make a more inspired hire there. Who are a few names we're hearing there, Mark?
Well, there are 3 names that we've heard. Georgia Tech's Buster Faulkner, Tennessee's Joey Hazel, I think is how you say it, Hazel, and then Pitt's Cade Bell, which is the son of Kerwin Bell. Sounds like all 3 of these guys are well respected. I watched Pitt a little bit against Miami. I watched Buster Faulkner all year, and I do believe that even Scott Stricklin was under the belief that Buster Faulkner is the secret sauce at Georgia Tech. Their quarterback is fantastic. Help me with his name.
Their quarterback?
The Georgia Tech quarterback, who's just absolutely fantastic. But, if he's a guy who can do it all, run. He's an unbelievable rusher and a good passer. He's what you could see in an ideal world. You could see DJ Lagway being. So I would think that would be a really nice fit. Obviously, Tennessee, what they've done under Heupel has been fantastic. They, at least that side of the ball, their tempo, they score a lot of points. They're constantly in the top 5 in the country, whether when Heupel was at UCF and when he's been at Tennessee. Offense has not been an issue for Tennessee. Cade Bell, a little bit more pro style at Pitt, what they're running up there under Narduzzi. So those 3 guys, I think, are who they're choosing from. I would think, fingers crossed, Buster Faulkner, if you're a Florida fan and you want to see a little combination of, maybe bring out the best of DJ, I would think Faulkner's the guy I would like to lean on.
Yeah, Haynes King, who's the
Haynes
cast
King, thank you.
Texas A&M, 15 rushing touchdowns, 922 rushing yards, and then he's thrown for 12 and is like, what is it? He's like 8 point something per attempt. It's pretty robust, 8.4. So yeah, he's turned a guy 71%, 72% completion percentage. So he's taken a guy who was lost and now he's found. But yeah, man. So speaking of lost and someone who's found, what do you think is DJ Lagway's, how he fits in? Because I thought it was interesting. He's talking about the players, and I think DJ was at the press conference, but he mentioned like number 13, Jaden Baugh, who we'll get to from the FSU game, was spectacular and put a cap on a very, very good season as a sophomore. Said we have a lot of really good receivers. Dallas Wilson was there yesterday. I think Vernell Brown was, the two true freshmen. And he said we got dudes on defense. You know, one dude he didn't mention, DJ.
No, he didn't mention anybody by name. Yeah, they actually called them killers, right? Killers on defense at one point.
But he didn't like even acknowledge DJ, which was interesting and probably just an oversight. This guy's up there. I was trying to say this to someone. Someone was like, oh, yeah, he's all over the place. Someone said this to me. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I was a little nervous asking my question. I mean, he's up there in front of Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. He's got his dad, his mother, in-laws, all these people we mentioned here, cameras everywhere, and media that he's never met. I thought he handled himself pretty damn well. But anyway.
Well, and on the players, I think
his mind is all I'm saying.
And on the players, I think I actually understand that. My understanding on it would be don't mention DJ by name and don't mention Jaden Baugh by name unless you can mention 10 guys by name, right? And then if you mention 10, there's going to be
we
3,
could have
4,
said
5.
We have a great quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
He could have, but you're right, no question. But I think if you start highlighting one group, somebody else feels left out.
We said
so I think he did, and he said 13, and he said defense, but maybe hey, listen, the thing is we also don't know is he might know is DJ staying. We talked about this last week. DJ has financial incentive to stay. He's got to pay back some of his NIL if he doesn't stay. He signed a 3-year deal, I believe. And so some of that's so there would be financial implications for DJ leaving. But, I think, also you wait to see who the offensive coordinator is if you're DJ and you see how he's going to fit. If they brought in some pro style offense with the guy under center throwing the ball, I don't think that's going to be the case, but it might not be a good fit for DJ. I think whoever they hire will be a good fit. Yeah,
I do want to just say one more thing about Sumrall and the whole Billy Napier 2.0 thing, because that's been the big, that's been the consternation within Gator Nation, right? Group of 5 school, Sun Belt ties at Troy for 2 seasons, coming from a school in Louisiana. He's 42-11. Billy was 40-12. And then, I mean, the fan base came unhinged, right? At all these connections. And I like this quote. No two people are the same. Coach Meyer, you coach G5 football, right? Indiana's Kirk Signetti coached G5. No two people are the same. Judge me for who I am. I'm a winner. We're going to win. Just give me a shot. Believe in me. I liked it. I thought it was strong.
Yeah, no, he was fantastic. And I just want to put a bow on Florida's list, right? Nobody really had everybody on the list, but we have the list. I think we have the list. We were told 10 guys, and I'll go through them, not in any order. Lane Kiffin, Jon Sumrall, Rhett Lashley, Marcus Freeman, Eli Drinkwitz, Matt Patricia, Jeff Brom, Jed Fish, Clark Lee, and Alex Kolish.
Kenny Dillingham.
And Kelly Dillingham. There we go. And Dillingham,
That's who I kind of wanted all along in a lot of ways.
And they went to Dillingham early, and Dillingham said, I want to be
one of one.
Yeah, I want to be one of one. I don't want to be the back. I don't want to be anybody's backup. I don't want to be anybody's third choice, fourth choice. I'm not going to sit there and say, yeah, go down the road of negotiating in good faith of, well, if Kiffin doesn't take that job, then I'm the guy. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to be part of it. And I respect that for sure. But that's a pretty good list. Marcus Freeman, I don't know if Marcus Freeman has been out there. Matt Patricia, I don't know if he's out there. Clark Lee. But you go look at the guys. Lashley
Clark Lee was kind of late coming around the outside, outside turn or whatever before, turn 4. He was, and he was going to be probably the move, or Patricia. It sounded like
it sounds like, it was going to be, if it's not Jon Sumrall, it's Clark Lee or Matt Patricia. And I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Jed Fish. If it's not Jon Sumrall, it's Jed Fish or Jeff Brom. Talking to some people yesterday, you and I both came to the agreement that it would have been Clark Lee or Matt Patricia. So those guys stood out in the interview process, and we know for a fact, like Dillingham, they ruled out early. We know they ruled out Drinkwitz early. Marcus Freeman got ruled out early because he obviously, wasn't really looking to
himself out early.
Yeah, wasn't looking to. Yeah, the same thing with Drinkwitz. They just weren't looking to leave right now. But I think, Fish would have been. I think when you look at that list, and we got 11 names on it with Dillingham. My guess is Fish would have been 11 of 11. Like he would have been, their last option. And I don't even think he was an option because they had gotten down to the, where they. But with that all said, Scott made a lot of money for a lot of people. Drinkwitz signed an extension with Missouri. Clark Lee got a new contract at Vanderbilt. Rhett Lashley got a big time deal for SMU. Alex Golish goes to Auburn. All those guys. I think Freeman, obviously, he's going to sign a deal. Fish might get a deal too with Washington. They've had a pretty good season, and they're going to be really good next year. So I think they're really young this year. Now, everything I hear is they're going to be really good next year, potentially 10-win team. So that's why it's imperative that Jon Sumrall wins quickly at Florida, because if not, there'll be people going, look at what Lane's doing at LSU. Look at what Jed Fish is doing at Washington. He needs to win, and he's made no mistake about it. He wants to build it for long term, but also win quickly.
Yeah, he talked about that. He is not. He said they'd been 5-7, 5-6, 5-7 at Troy. I'm not saying this is Troy. He said that job was actually an easier rebuild, and he named some guys. But he's like, look, we're doing everything we can to win fast. I have a plan on how to win long term, but I want to win tomorrow, today, and every day. I already referenced my son. He's 12. When we play basketball in the backyard, he gets his butt kicked because I want to win.
That's not very. Yeah, that sounds familiar for my household.
Oh yeah, beating up on Nolan.
Yeah,
he'll get you one day though. It always will happen. Yeah, I thought. Sumrall again made all the right moves, said all the right things, and they also got him for a pretty good deal. He was making 3 at Tulane. He was going to get 4. I think if he stayed, he's getting 7.4 and change here over 6 years, 44.7. So you're getting Lane Kiffin's getting 13 at LSU. Well, so the savings of whatever that is, 5.5 million, you can plow into getting a couple of pretty elite coordinators there. We are hearing the defensive coordinator is likely going to be Kentucky's Brad White. He and Jon Sumrall worked together for 3 years, 2019, 2021. Brad White has, I tell you, Wesley, man, Johnny on the spot there, had some pretty good defenses there, including one that beat Dan Mullen in his first game against Kentucky, first SEC game in the Swamp, if you recall, and shut that offense down, and has a pretty good track record. Hadn't been great of late. Mark Stoops was fired on Sunday, and they ate about a $38 million buyout there. But think he's a pretty solid hire. I'm not going to say inspired, but you also have a defensive-minded head coach, and these guys have collaborated before, done well before, comfort level, similar philosophies. I don't mind that hire at all. I think the inspired hire needs to be the offensive guy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And going back, and again, he's got a pool of $16.3 million, 16.3 to spend on his entire support staff and his 10 assistant coaches. That's a pretty good pool. I don't know how much more or less it is than Napier, but
it feels like a few million more. A couple.
Yeah. And that's cost of doing business, right? Everything's, going to go up. And I think you're looking at your OC and DC are probably going to cost you close to $4 million between the two of them. And so they got to get that right. And again, we go back. This guy's not.
You have a GM now, Mark, too.
Yeah, you have a GM who's making, I think, pretty close to 2, maybe not 2, but 1.5 potentially. So he's got skin in the game. You're going to have your OC, DC, and GM all have some pretty good skin in the game. So 16.3. I'll say this: the contract is different than Billy Napier. You can tell this is Scott Stricklin looking to do things differently. If he was fired, and again, you hate to get into all this, but it's 70%. Billy's was 85%, right? He got 85% of his contract was guaranteed. Jon Sumrall is only 70%, which is that's in Florida's favor. He has a buyout, $10 million if he was to leave in year 1, $8 million in year 2, and then it drops precipitously 3, 2, 2, 1, 0 buyout for the coach to get out down the road, and then he's got a $5 million bonus for winning the college football playoff. And I think one of the interesting things we found out was that Lane Kiffin would have had a $10 million CFP incentive. And you're seeing a lot of that across college football where ADs are trying to incentivize everything, trying to make, keep these contracts in check a little bit, maybe reduce some of the guarantees and really incentivize, hey, if you win, you're going to make a ton of money. And Lane Kiffin, maybe Florida's contract's not what LSU, maybe it wasn't quite there, but it was very highly incentivized to the point where the guy would have made a $10 million bonus for winning the whole thing. That's a pretty good chunk of change that if you win it once in your 6 years or whatever, 7-year contract, whatever it is, it bumps that significantly, even when you spread it out. You know what I mean?
I do. It's not the FedEx Cup, but yeah, it's still pretty
good.
No. So yeah, that's what do you say, Scott Stricklin? Okay, let's talk about Scott here for a minute. I tell you, that was one relaxed, happy, chatty, giddy person yesterday. I think
relieved. Yeah,
exactly. He was relieved. He knew he had just watched a guy nail it on, stick the landing at the press conference, and feels good about who he got, and also was one day removed of the Lane Kiffin drama and probably wiping his brow in relief, to use your word. So yes, so Scott, how do you think? Obviously this is the biggest hire of his career. He's heading into the, he's 55, but he's got 5 more years to go, or 4 or 5 on his contract extension. And, this is his last football hire, but how do you think he handled it all? How do you think he did? And, fans, man, these people are just, the vitriol towards Scott is just, so like the Niagara Falls. It's been, and I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. I'd love to have his salary and use of the plane and the house in Destin, all those things. But I would not want to be Scott Stricklin these last 6 weeks. And really the next 9 months till this season kicks off, there's going to be plenty of noise still for this man, because a lot of people don't think he's the man for the job, but it's his job and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he has the support of the Board of Trustees, and I think he gained a lot of favor with this hire in the last couple of days, when people are looking at Jon Sumrall, digging in on Jon Sumrall, listening to Scott Stricklin. Listen, there's a narrative out there. And Scott was very adamant that there's a narrative out there and it's wrong. There's a lot of wrong things out there. One of them is that Turnkey dumped Florida, that he went rogue on term. It didn't happen. One of them is this Gary Condren went rogue and didn't want to hire Lincoln. That didn't happen.
Or that he put a deadline in to make, because he didn't want Lane all.
Yeah. Listen, he is adamant. Lane Kiffin was their target. They went down the road with Lane Kiffin. They wanted Lane Kiffin. He tried to make it happen. I don't think Lane Kiffin wanted to be at Florida. I don't think Jimmy Sexton necessarily wanted Lane Kiffin at Florida. You can get into the GM. Maybe the GM spooked Lane Kiffin and his camp. That's possible. That Scott wanted a big time GM. He wanted a real deal at GM. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I like Dave Caldwell. I think Dave Caldwell's done a lot of good things. I think he did some good things in Jacksonville. I think he's done some good things in Philadelphia. I think he's the right guy, going to be the right fit. He's going to work well with Sumrall. Ton of experience. And you can look at his record at the Jags and rip on him all you want, but the guy's grown up considerably since being a 40-year-old, one of the youngest GMs in the NFL at 40 years old when he took over in 2013. So he's learned a lot, come a long way since then, and he's going to be fine. But Scott, is calling people, like calling reporters and going, hey, that's wrong. That's just wrong. Whatever you're hearing is not the case. So Scott's pushing back on some of this stuff and is really standing his ground and going, hey, listen, I can sit here and I have thick skin and I can take it all. But he's like, why? Why not just call? And I'm not calling and ripping people, tearing them a new one, or cursing anybody out. I'm just calling them and saying, hey, I get it. You got information, but you've got one side of a story, and it's not true. This is the reality. He's trying to help people a little bit get it right. So he turned to Urban Meyer. He relied on Steve Spurrier. He relied on Danny Wuerffel. He relied on Duke Werner. He relied on Turnkey. The price tag for Turnkey, I think a lot of people are like, wow, you could have hired this guy without Turnkey. I mean, listen, it's not your money. He's not spending your money. It's not like they're not going to be able to sign DJ Lagway because they paid Turnkey. They're paying Turnkey $150,000. And again, that's not chump change. I'd love for somebody to pay me $150,000 for 6 weeks of work, right? To be able to set up 11 interviews. I think I could do that and do it well and keep my mouth shut about who's doing what, when, where, and how, and keep it undercover. But I in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about a program with what's the UAA budget? 200 million?
200 million now.
Yeah, $210 million a year. I think, they're going to be able to withstand the $150K check that they're writing to Turnkey to get their guy. So, but again, I thought Scott handled himself well. He took a shot at Lane, which a little veiled shot when he said, this guy, I think he said something along the Jon Sumrall. He didn't want someone fake. And I think that was, I think that's a shot at Lane. Lane has faked for a long time that Ole Miss was drawing him, right? Like I need to go home and pray. I think I need to go home and talk to his dad, Monty Kiffin, all of that. I think there are some people, and I'm not saying that's necessarily Scott. I'm just saying there are some people who thought there was a lot of showmanship on a decision that was maybe made weeks ago. And again, I get some of the late drama, because he did want to coach Ole Miss, and I think he thought he was going to be allowed to coach Ole Miss, and that was kind of pulled out from under him. But there was a lot that didn't necessarily have to happen here. You could have told the world that you were leaving Ole Miss. I think he knew he was leaving Ole Miss. I don't think you send your family on scouting trips to Baton Rouge and Gainesville unless you're leaving Ole Miss. So, some of that stuff. And I think people looked at that and maybe turn their thumb up to it and turn their nose up to it. And, and they maybe even feel like it stinks a little bit as not being necessarily real. Jon Sumrall is pretty real.
Yeah, one name you left out of the decision-making, Layla Kiffin, and then her brother, Chris Kiffin. They came to Gainesville. I think she at least went to Baton Rouge, and they just decided Gainesville wasn't a fit because of high school athletics, maybe Layla too much familiarity, had gone to school here, things like that, and was just like, let's do something different, new, whatever. And the family did play a key role. His son is a high school sophomore quarterback. They want him, best opportunities he can get. I mean, so he's trying to be a, good parent, committed guy to family. And that may have swayed the decision some too. Also, Dave Caldwell, whose name you just dropped, most people that listen to Swamp Things are rabid Gator fans. He's the new general manager. He was named yesterday. And I'm just giving you a hard time, but his name just came out. Dave Caldwell. It's like,
oh, sorry.
He's the new GM. And Mark knows him well. Mark covered the Jags. Dave is just class guy, easy going. My Lord. I mean, he's nice as you'll meet. And I think we're dealing with some good people here with he and Jon Sumrall. So the interesting thing on Dave Caldwell is he's coming from the NFL. And when you're at the NFL, there are probably two ways to approach the cap. Mark would know this better, but I spoke to someone about this the other day. You can be very cash conscious, or you can be like our U.S. government and keep kicking the debt down the road and pay later. We'll pay later, structuring contracts that way and, restructuring contracts consistently. I don't know that it's going to work that way here at Florida or at the college level. The other point someone made is the sheer volume of contracts that you're going to be dealing with at the college level versus NFL level, where they have 4-year free agency, contracts, things. I mean, you can jump more quickly than that, but contracts are more longer term than they are here. You also are dealing directly with an agent, typically a player. You're not dealing with Uncle Jimmy. You're not dealing with parents. You're not dealing with the kid, and other kids from other programs wanting to maybe come, and their parents and uncles and all these people. I mean, we saw the infrastructure of DJ Lagway Enterprises at the foundation thing he held. I mean, he's got 7th cousins over there, are hanging out. So it's like there's a lot of people to deal with. I asked Dave directly about that yesterday. He said we will deal with one person when it comes to negotiating the price for a player. But you will have a lot of voices, and you're going to have a lot of deals that you're cycling through consistently. And as he said, it's not a one-man job.
No, it's a huge job, and it's only going to get bigger. It's continuing to increase the load, the money, rev share, NIL isn't going away. And NIL has gone from, a few $100,000 here and there to millions and millions, 15, maybe 25. I think, isn't that the numbers that were being thrown around for NIL for Lane Kiffin was what, Lane swore yesterday he didn't even ask about his contract. He wanted to know, the only question he wanted to know is how much money am I going to have to build a roster? How much money am I going to have to give to players? And if the rev share part is 15.8, and then NIL on top of that, some of these programs are talking about $25 million in addition to the 15.8. So you're talking about a $40 million roster. It's not NFL standards by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not far off either. And it's still relatively the same when you're talking about taking, $40 million and spreading it amongst essentially 85 scholarship players.
So Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, Danny Wuerffel were there, and got to talk to Urban just for a bit, who commented that I've gotten grayer and balder since his press conference 21 years ago. I said I was already gray and bald when I was there, Urban. You just don't remember. But he was great, very friendly. He seemed, in a good place, and he really likes Jon Sumrall. And the thing he said about him, he's just going to coach tough football teams. And in the end, you got to be tough. And I said, yeah, Bloody Tuesday. And he goes, yep, Bloody Tuesday. Because Urban, every Tuesday, those practices were brawls. Billy Napier talked about this. You and I have talked about this many times. They would do 16 reps of ones versus ones on Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, it's just like, okay. I mean, you're just like getting warmed up, cracking your knuckles at that point, right? I mean, you're on the second hole or whatever, like your back's loosening up. You're ready to start playing. I don't get that. Urban Meyer, man, there's warfare out there. Not to, undermine real war, but it is Urban Meyer, they practiced hard, man. And he believes Jon Sumrall is going to bring that kind of edge, that kind of culture. And he loves what he hears from that guy. And he talked about it, man. We want to be a tough football team, Jon Sumrall said.
Yeah, he used tough with you. I talked to Urban. He talked about rugged. He said he's like football. There's a lot has changed, but this part has not changed. He's like still generally the more rugged team wins. And he's like, this guy's going to build a rugged team in all three phases, and he's going to get it done. Remains to be seen. But Urban spoke with Sumrall, weeks ago, early in the process. They spoke for an hour, and he's like, he couldn't really say anything because Sumrall kept peppering him with questions. And what were the three things Sumrall wanted to know about? He wanted to know about Bloody Tuesdays. He wanted to know about Tuesdays, the strength and conditioning program, and off-season workouts. Those were the things. And you go back and you look at, and Urban's like, oh man, it just sounded all too familiar. Because you go back and you look at Urban's time at Ohio State, Bowling Green, Florida, and even Utah. Those were kind of some of the tenets of his program. Tuesday was everything. Bloody Tuesday was everything. That's where you decided who was going to play for the week. That's where you decided, who was the, offense, defense, winners, losers, depth chart. It was all set on Tuesday.
Sick, remember?
Yeah, it was all set on Tuesdays. And you look at the offseason. His offseason conditioning program was insane. Mat drills, the circle of life, circle of death, really is what it was.
Well, you had trash cans everywhere for you to vomit.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff, that's where you built your team. That's where you built this toughness, this ruggedness. And then the last one was strength and conditioning coach. I don't know that strength and conditioning coach is quite what it used to be. It used to be the most important position on your staff because they spent all this time. But now coaches can be around these guys more in the spring. They can be around them in the summer for OTAs. There's a lot more time that coaches get with these players. It used to just be the strength coach from January to March, and then from April to July was just the strength coach was the only guy who got to be around these guys. So that's not the case anymore, but I still think it's an important hire. If you look at Florida's strength coach, I don't know if he's getting it done. I look at the number of injuries at Florida, and that raises a red flag. I don't know that there's any correlation. Billy Gonzalez says there's not, but I think it's fair to look at it and see, okay, I look at this team in the trenches. I don't think they were good enough the last 4 years under Billy Napier on the offensive line and the defensive line to have the number of returning starters they've had on the offensive line and to not be able to push people around is another red flag. So I think the strength and conditioning coach is going to be a very important hire for this program.
Jon Sumrall, we're going to play with an edge, a blue-collar mindset, and a chip on our shoulder. We will be tough. We will have grit. We will not be outworked. We will play with passion and physicality. I mean, he's speaking my language. This guy's a former linebacker, which has always been my favorite position for whatever reason. Love the linebackers. And I remember him when he was at Kentucky now, Mark, actually. I remember the name because, the JON, and filling out game boxes. He led the Wildcats in tackles. These weren't very good Kentucky teams, mind you. And he said he was marginally athletic and just worked his tail off to become the player he became. And he was even on some lists, some watch lists. Those things are as long as my arm. But he got on one. I mean, getting on one is still an achievement, right? Especially if you're at Kentucky in 2004 when you probably went 3-8 the year before. And then he gets a diagnosis that changed his life. He is numbness in his arms. And he said it went from occasional to constant, painful. And he said he was experiencing this off and on for 2 years. I mean, most people 2 weeks, maybe 2 months of that, and you're at the doctor. So this guy was trying to play through it. He didn't want the diagnosis, and thankfully it didn't lead to irreparable damage for him. But he's down in the Did he say he was in the Panhandle? Wasn't he drinking beer or something?
Yes,
and he said
on the beach. He said on the beach.
He's on the beach with his flip phone and gets a phone call from a guy who worked for Rich Brooks' staff, who was the coach at Kentucky at the time, saying, hey, Rich Brooks wants you to become a GA. He said he went back to his condo or wherever, got a good night's sleep, and drove to Lexington the next day, and the rest is history. And he said that's how he got into coaching. And here he is. So I thought that was a good story. Steve Spurrier, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I mean, the crowd around him is immense. And you got a few quotes from the head ball coach. What do you have to say about Jon Sumrall?
Yeah, it's funny. It's, everybody piles on, right? The former guy. And I thought Steve kind of piled on a little bit, said
can't help himself.
No, he can't. But he said, this guy's got a different mentality. He's got a winning mentality. And he's like, we haven't necessarily had that around here from some of these other guys. And it was a shot at Napier. Maybe it was a shot at Mullen, certainly McElwain. And I think all of them. Spurrier's been here, right? He's been here for all of them. He wasn't here for Zook. He was off in the NFL. But he was back here for Urban. He was back here for McElwain, Muschamp, Mullen, all of them. And he's got an office over there, right? So he's seen it. He's been at all these games. He's watching them just like you and me. And, he's coming at it with a different lens, a different perspective, but he sees what everybody else sees, that it's not good enough. So I think it's, and you love the fact that he calls a spade a spade. He calls them out for it has not been good enough. Even in the press conference, did we mention this? That Steve, that Jon Sumrall's talking about his Steve Spurrier impersonation, and Steve's kind of got a funny look on his face, and he goes, "I love you, coach." And then Spurrier from the third row just chimes in and says, "Just win a bunch of games." Like, that's really that's the bottom line. And he's like, "Oh, we're going to do that." Jon Sumrall responded, but that's the reality of everything. Just win a bunch of games, and that's Spurrier knows that's the key to having yourself a statue built out front. Is you win a bunch of ball games here.
Sumrall reacted to that, clapped his hand, stepped back, pumped his fist in the air. He didn't shy away from it.
No.
That's one of the qualities about him that stood out. He is not shying away from this. And as Scott Stricklin said, from our very first conversation, Jon Sumrall stood out. His clarity, his urgency, his competitive mindset was unmistakable. He didn't just tiptoe around expectations. He leaned into them. And, Scott leaned into this choice. And this is the 7th coach I've covered. I think Mark might 8 if you include HBC, because he was a student reporter when he coached. And is this going to be our last, Mark? You said you were going to outlast the last guy, and you proved to be prescient. Are we going to outlast this guy?
I don't know, man. I hope I don't. Listen, I think for Florida, I don't know that you can get a Mark Stoops, 13 years. You're right. That's few and far between. I think there's only 4 coaches who are longer tenured.
Accepted there. It ain't here.
Yeah, and it's hard. But, I mean, if Jon Sumrall lasts 8 or 10 years, he might outlast me. I'm not going to bet on this guy. I'm not going to bet against this guy, is what I was going to say. I'm not going to bet against him. I like him. I like the hire. I would have liked Lane Kiffin. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I would have liked Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin would have been great. A little bit quirkier dude. But I can see the fan base is going to like Jon Sumrall when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I don't need to be monitoring his various social media accounts. He might even have one on True Social for all I know. I do not need to be like getting tweets, notifications, 11:38 at night, like Lane Kiffin's, calling out somebody or doing whatever. Doing hot yoga with the cheerleading squad of the opposing school at 6:38 in the morning on Saturday of game day. So Jon Sumrall, I think, is going to be a little more pleasant to cover in those ways. Not so much of that, so much noise and all that, but he's going to have to produce. He knows it. I don't know how quickly he can. I think he's going to inherit a pretty good roster in some respects and going to have to rebuild in others. Gators played Florida State on Saturday night. Let's not forget. And I tell you, Mark, I went to that game going, my Lord, I don't want to be here. And people, oh, yeah, complaining about the best job in the world. Yeah, I am complaining because that was not going to be – I didn't have anyone having to do with that game. It meant nothing. I thought it was going to be just a pillow fight. I thought it was going to be uncompetitive. It was ultimately because the Gators just stomped them. But, man, when you get to watch a guy perform the way Jaden Baugh did, it was worth every minute of being at that stadium. When you get to watch a guy go 266 rushing yards on 38 carries, I mean, I'm not getting crazy here, but that's Herschel Walker land. That's Ricky Williams. That's like watching, that's old school. You know, I think Herschel Walker, for my money to this day, is still the best college football player I've seen. I mean, you just gave him the rock and just let him do his thing and won games. And Jaden Baugh, man, when Jacoby Jackson got hurt and when Billy Napier was fired, Billy Gonzalez is like, look, man, this is our guy. He's the best athlete on the team, pound for pound, strongest guy they've had in this program. We're giving him the football and we're going to let him do his thing. And he did it on Saturday night, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever witnessed anything quite like that. Certainly not the Gators. I mean, I didn't witness Emmitt Smith running for 316. So this is the best. It's the second best of all time. Mm-hmm. So just being in the swamp, I think it was first off, the fans were fantastic. I think they showed up way more than they should have, probably more than this team deserved. But it was nice to send the seniors out with a win. It was nice to send Billy Gonzalez out with a win. And it was really nice to send the fans out with some positivity after a season in which, you lost to USF early. Yes, you beat Texas, but then you should have lost to Mississippi State in the swamp, and you get blown out by Tennessee, one of the worst games we've witnessed last week. So to come back and perform like that, yeah, it's a downtrodden FSU team, but you prevented them from making a bowl game. You prevented them from tearing up your turf, planting the flag at midfield. All those things were factors. And these guys put on a show for their new coach. It was an audition, and Jon Sumrall admitted it. Hey, I was watching that game. So he watched, he knows, so from that standpoint, it was a big, big win-win for everybody there. And fun to watch. Jaden Baugh, fantastic player. They should build their offense around him. It's good to see DJ make some throws, 3 touchdown passes. And I think when you can run the ball, he's going to be much more effective, especially on those deep throws, play action. Stuff's going to be open. Defensively played well, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, I believe it was, maybe 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Really got after it. I thought the defensive front was good. I think some of those young guys in the secondary are coming around. The only negative the whole night was poor Trey Smack ending the year like he started it with a missed extra point. His first one in 100 kicks.
He made 100 straight kicks, and it was the school record.
Extra points.
Points, and Brian Clark was 62 of 62. Only 2 guys to never miss one. He missed the final kick in the swamp. I'm sure he's still thinking about it. He's got to be. He's a competitive dude. That would be haunting. That sucked because I think the guy could be a Groza finalist. The Oklahoma kicker, I forget his name, is going to win it for sure, but he's been great, and then he does that. So kind of a limp finish there. And the funny thing about that, it was a 19-point win as a result, and it would have been the first time they'd won 2 20-point games consecutively since Urban in 07, 8, 9. But so I changed it to 2 19-point wins.
Nice.
Which doesn't ring quite as well. So, yeah, the funny thing about that Emmett game, Mark, and we were going to wrap this up in a minute. It's a little long, but it was huge news and big day for the Gators. the Emmett game, I was a student reporter with the New Mexico Daily Lobo, who was the opponent that day against Florida. So kind of funny.
Wow. Well played.
Yeah. I wasn't here. I watched it on TV. They weren't sending a student reporter to Gainesville, Florida from Albuquerque. But so I've seen the two performances, the best ones by the Gators. It broke Jimmy DeBose's record of 204, 50-year-old record against Florida State for the most rushing yards. Pretty cool and strong performance. So quick basketball will be our Foley's Corner, the weekly nod to the former athletic director, whose focus on all-around excellence is still being felt. Huge opportunity for Todd Golden's Gators, reigning national champions. Kind of sputtering at times. Lose the opener to Arizona State, where the defense was a no-show. Lose to TCU, surprisingly, blow a 10-point lead in the second half, or squander. I like to use squander versus blow. Blow's a little harsh. But TCU forced 19 turnovers and beat them 84-80 last Thursday, but they bounced back. But they won 90-78, or I think it was
something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, they beat Providence the next day. Sorry, Phil, don't have the box score in front of me. But Duke, tonight, Cameron Indoor. I was actually hoping to go to the game. This coaching situation kind of got in the way of any plans for that. But the Blue Devils are 8-0. Cameron Boozer, who was a UF target. He's a target by a lot of people, but Todd Golden and them have their sights set on the Boozer twins, Caden and Cameron. And they were South Florida guys, Miami guys, but their dad, Carlos, was a star, a legend at Duke. So they ended up there with the Blue Devils. Cameron Boozer, I think he's 6'9", 250. He's a beast. Todd said he'd be the number one pick if I were a GM. He's a top 3 guy. He's averaging like 23, 10, and 4 assists roughly. Leads the team in all the categories. He's going to be the guy they got to contain. But you also got to deal with the Cameron crazies. And it's going to be a heck of an environment for them to go play in, and exciting for the Gators. You pull an upset in this one, man, it's a big resume booster.
Yeah, this one would vault you back into the top 10, I think, from a ranking standpoint. Yeah, Cam Boozer's fantastic. 84 3-pointers in 8 games, so they're averaging 10 plus a game. So that's going to be, I don't know what the number is there, but I know Florida doesn't want them to making 10 threes or more in this game. So,
well, one thing they did see is 4 threes from Xavier Lee, who before that had 1 in 21 attempts in 3 previous games and was in a slump to beyond slumps, shooting like 16% from 3-point range. Not what you were looking for when you brought him down from Princeton to presumably replace this legendary backcourt trio of Will Richard, Elijah Martin, and Walter Clayton. So if he can build on that and they can loosen up the defense a little bit for the front court, you got to think that the Gators can definitely give the Blue Devils a game. If they're ice cold from 3, it could be a long night there. What's the line, Mark? I'm looking right now. Duke's favored by 8.5. So speaking of odds, last week, Mark and I were each 6-4 in picks. He didn't gain any ground. Diego Pavia and Diego I trust. And then Jaden Ball, my boy, came through for me in the swamp. Mark picked against the Gators. So we got some games this week, and I don't know how prepared we are, but I got the odds up in front of us. Let's just hit the biggies. We'll take a couple outside of the SEC here. Texas Tech is giving 13.5 to BYU in the Big 12 championship.
I'm rolling with Tech.
Likewise, Alabama getting 2.5 against Georgia in the SEC title game. I love the time, 4:00 in the afternoon. I always love how they play that at 4:00 every year, and they still do. What do you got?
Your pick. You go first.
My pick. I tell you, man, Bama getting 2.5. I'm taking Bama.
I will take Georgia.
We got.
I think Georgia's been. Georgia's found a way, man. They are something. They're scrappy.
Yeah, they're gonna find a way by 1 point, and I'm gonna win. I'm getting 2.5. No, it's I was thinking Georgia, but I took Bama just because I had a feeling you might take Georgia. And I already have a lead. I got to give it back a little bit to you and give you a chance here. Only a few games, though. Duke, Virginia. My father, who's a faithful Swamp Things listener, man.
That's the ACC title game?
Yeah, and he's going to be pumped. Virginia could get in the playoff. I mean, this program look, ready to make another coaching change. But Tony Elliott has him in a good position. They're giving 3.5 to Duke. Who do you like in that one?
I'll take Virginia. I haven't seen Duke play all year. I have no idea what Duke is. I know they've got the old Tulane quarterback.
Yeah,
I know that. But I'm going to go with Virginia.
And Manny Diaz is a defensive guy. It'll be an offensive guy and Tony Elliott against defensive guy. I'm taking Virginia. I'm not betting against my home state team. And then the final game, and it is an 8:00 kick because I was saying to Mark, man, if this game's at noon, what are they doing? But they aren't. 8:00, one of the best college football, most anticipated college football games all season and in a while. Indiana, Ohio State, man. 1-2, Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, unbeatens. I love Kirk Cignetti, and I am taking Indiana getting 4.5, man. I've drank the Kool-Aid on Coach Sig.
I'll take Ohio State gladly. Pick Tulane.
Oh yeah, we got Tulane.
What do you got a line?
I'm looking. We're always prepared at Swamp Things, people. That's a Friday game, and I'd scrolled down. Let's see. We got Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. We're not betting that one. North Texas.
Tulane's getting 2.5.
Giving 2.5. What do you got?
You know what? I'll bet on the new coach. Give me it's two coaches who are both leaving, right? I'll take Tulane. You take North Texas.
I'm not taking North Texas. I'm not betting against what I'm going to get on Coach Sumrall's bad side already. That'll happen.
All right.
We'll both take one Tulane. More. Let's do one more.
All right.
Because we got former coach Dan Mullen.
You're going to pick Dan Mullen? Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting 3.5 against Boise. I'm taking Mullen, man.
Of course you are. I will take the blue-fielded Boise State guys.
I mean, I've been missing Dan Mullen a little bit. I mean,
Dirk Cutter's there. One of my favorites.
Who?
Dirk Cutter,
former
Jags OC.
He's back there. That's where he kind of got going.
He's an analyst, I think. He's an analyst for.
That's where he got his career going. He probably likes living there. But yeah, I've always liked Dan Mullen and thought he was fun to cover. His offenses were good. If it went off the rails, it was ugly at the end. But I'm excited for Jon Sumrall. Just to, if people can't tell at this point, but we're both excited. There's obviously going to be skeptics, and there should be. There are reasons to be skeptical, but there are, I think, more reasons to be optimistic that this guy could be the right fit and could get the Gators back in a place of prominence, whether it's championships, we'll see. But I think we're going to at least have a program on the right trajectory going forward, Mark.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. Again, not the guy we've been looking for 6 weeks, but I think he might be a better fit when it's all said and done for short-term turnaround and long-term stability.
Thanks for the conversation, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always.
A little longer one than usual, but only one for the week. People that enjoy Swamp Things can now watch it on YouTube as they're seeing, and can also listen to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please tell your friends and subscribe. And we'd like some comments. I think our rating's like 3 because nobody seems to like us, but maybe give us some positive comments and get that rating up a little bit. Also want to thank our faithful producer, Wesley Alden, for continued efforts. The 3 of us appreciate everyone who took time from their busy lives to join us. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Swamp Things, your Florida Gators podcast. For more coverage, visit OrlandoSentinel.com and APnews.com. On Twitter, follow Edgar at OS Gators and Mark at AP Mark Long. Please subscribe to this podcast, share it on social media, and review it on iTunes. See you next time.